Hello and welcome to the program. I am Mary Kanu. As Nigerians looked forward to a quick resolution to the hardship caused by the Naira scarcity crisis, the Supreme Court has again adjourned till March 3rd the case instituted by some state governments against the federal government challenging the implementation of the Naira redesign policy. This comes a week after the court had adjourned the suit to February 22nd to allow it to consolidate all cases on the matter emanating from 9 more states of the Federation seeking to be joined in the suit. Now, 3 states, Kaduna, Kogi and Zamfara, had initially sued the federal government over the implementation of the Naira policy over the hardship they claim the policy had brought upon the country. While 9 states had joined the case last week, 6 others were added at Wednesday's proceedings, bringing it to a total of 16 plaintiffs, with 2 states, Bayelsa and Edo, taking the side of the federal government. Now, plaintiffs also dragged President Muhammadu Buhari before the Apex Court over his directive of February 16 directing the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele to reissue only the old 200 Naira note, maintaining that the 500 and 1,000 Naira banknotes remain banned and Nigerians still in possession of the old notes should take it to the CBN for deposits. Now, the President's directive on the use and circulation of the old 200 Naira notes and the Supreme Court's adjournment of the Naira redesign case sees Nigerians on the receiving end of the Naira scarcity as long queues persist at banks despite the recirculation of old 200 Naira notes. Now, to give more insight into this, Curtis Adigba, a legal practitioner, joins me now on the program. It's good to have you join me. Now, let's begin. Now, the whole situation with the Naira redesign policy can be tagged messy. Now, the whole back and forth with the central bank, the federal government, and also state governments. Now, is this what Nigeria needs at a crucial time like this?
Well, I wouldn't say this is what Nigerians need. And I also wouldn't say that this is what Nigerians don't need. I think for both supporters and opponents of the policy, they agree on one thing, that the policy is needed, but they also say that they have problem with the implementation. So I think this implementation that a lot of people are not too convinced about. Other than that, I think the policy is needed. We needed it like last year, you know.
All right. Now, the counsel to the federal government, argued that the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction to hear the suit as the action cannot commence with the originating summons. Now, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think it's about technicality, but I am aware that the Attorney General had filed a motion on notice to challenge the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on the matter. That was on the 8th of February when that judgment, the ex parte order was made by the Supreme Court. Now, the court adjourned to the 15th when it was expected to consider that motion. Again, the court further adjourned the matter to the 22nd. And in spite of the high expectations that were riding on the resolution of the matter coming from the court again chose to adjourn. Not wanting to be the scapegoat, like the justices said. So I think that's until the court decides that it has no jurisdiction, it is assumed that the issue of jurisdiction is still mute at this point.
All right. Now, there's a general belief that President Muhammadu Buhari is guilty of contempt of court, having ordered that only the old 200 Naira notes should coexist with the new notes until April. But, the federal government's counsel has also argued that it is empowered under the Constitution to veto any legislation. I must ask you, how true is this?
Well, you cannot veto a legislation that is already in existence. If it's already a law that has been passed by the National Assembly, it can only be amended. I think what he was trying to say was simple that, look, the president has got exclusive power to give assent to laws, okay, when the National Assembly makes a law, except that if the, except, no, so what he was trying to say is, he was drawing an analogy, okay? And then he said, can state governors compare the president to give assent or veto a law? Do you understand? In the same way, basically, we're just saying that there are specific powers that the Constitution has given to the president, okay? And that he cannot be compared by governors to exercise that power. That was basically what he was trying to say. You know, because you see, what people do not understand is that the Constitution recognizes that we have 3 arms of government, equal arms of government, right? With specific powers and responsibilities. The president cannot stop the National Assembly from sitting down to make laws. I think people must understand that. Now, the National Assembly cannot stop the president from exercising his own powers. And both of them cannot stop the judiciary from carrying out its own function. Now, I think what the Supreme Court tried to do, really, based on the papers that were filed before it, was to stop the president from carrying out his responsibilities. Now, there is no conflict or dispute whatsoever between the powers of the president and those of the state governors, right? In fact, the governors have they have no power, no shred or iota of power as far as currency issue is concerned in this country. It is the president alone who has got the power over currency matters.
But then again, what then would you now make of the clash? Because I will call it a clash between the federal government and the Supreme Court, the president rather.
No, there's
and
no.
The Supreme,
I think that there's no clash between the Supreme Court and the federal government. You see, for those who accuse the federal government of contempt or disobeying the Supreme Court order, right? I will rather wait that instead of reacting from emotional standpoint, they should wait for the Supreme Court to make that pronouncement. The court has got a lot of options. The court can rebuke the federal government if it feels that the government disobeyed this order, right? The second thing is that the court can also cite the Attorney General of the Federation for contempt. And the court can also recommend to the National Assembly, where it feels that the president has disobeyed this order, to impeach the president. Now, the court is somehow reluctant about moving forward with the matter. Do you understand what I'm saying? And yet we have people who are abusing, being ruled by emotion, going out there. We even have state governors constituting themselves as enforcers of the order of the Supreme Court. You know? So I think we should wait for the court to say, look, we made an order and the federal government disobeyed that order.
Well, another thing is, the president said the Naira redesign policy was being implemented to guard against vote buying during elections. Now we have the upcoming elections on Saturday. And, many Nigerians think that the president, could have used another approach, which would not have resulted in this chaos that is being witnessed since the implementation. Now, do you believe that there are actually other less painful ways, to fight vote buying during elections?
I don't know. I've never bought votes. I don't know how easy or how difficult it is to buy votes. But what I do know is that this president has been very clear about what he intends to do. More than 3 months ago, he told the country, I will not allow money bags, those who think they have the resources, to mobilize these resources, employ thugs, and buy the election, right? Now, I do understand that the situation is critical and painful for a lot of our people. What I also do know is that it is not for lack of effort on the part of the government. But you see, we have a huge country. And that was why when this policy was being touted around, when it was being promoted, a few of us came out to say, look, I think the period for implementation is short. For a large country like this, where you don't have banks in so many parts of the country. And the same set of politicians who are crying out now were behind the president on the policy. But they had a blind spot. And that blind spot was they didn't see that this was going to hit them the way it's hitting them now. So the only reason why they are crying out is not because of the poor people. I mean, the poor people have been used to suffering in this country. This is just another level of suffering. But the only reason why they are crying is because they now feel that the major advantage that they had always retained in winning the election, which is having cash, and using the cash to buy votes, is no longer there. I don't know if you saw a member of the House of Reps who was on TV and trying to deceive the public by saying the law allows him to hold 70 million naira cash on election day, and that the law allows presidential candidate to hold 1 billion. That's not true. What the law says is that is the amount of money that is allowed to be spent by a candidate for the entire election. So I think we must separate the emotion from the facts, and we must also separate this kind of fake outrage over the sovereignty of the Nigerian people from the politics of it.
Well, all right now, I'm afraid that's how much we can take on the program, but Curtis Adigba, legal practitioner, thank you very much for your time and your insights.
Thanks for having me.
Right. Well, we'll take a break now, but when we return the program, we'll continue to stay with us.